think we need a new, quote-unquote, connection center. I think it's a waste of money, but what are you going to do? So, Matthew, are you a Christian? Again, I looked at him. I love Jesus. Does that count? Jim laughed as though he understood what I meant. At the time, I was going through a period when I didn't like telling people that I was a Christian. I didn't want them to be scared of me, fearing that I would invite them to church or to a rock concert starring Cutlass. And I didn't want them blaming me for the war in Iraq. Simply telling people that I love Jesus seemed like a cop-out to some of my friends, but often it kept me from having to own the sins of evangelicals in places like Kansas or South Carolina or 2 miles up the road at Jim's Pentecostal church. You know, man, said Jim, I moved here a couple years ago from Connecticut, where it's, in my opinion, spiritually dry. I thought moving here to Nashville would make being a Christian a whole lot easier. Easier? I asked. Why did you think that? Because Nashville is like the Christian Mecca. Jim made air quotes with his fingers when he said Christian Mecca. I'm sure he did it so I wouldn't assume he believed Nashville was Mecca or that Mecca was Christian. Among Christians, air quotes are a form of contextualization. I'm partial to using them myself, mostly because they prevent somebody from taking a potentially rash or exaggerated statement and using it against me. Wait just a minute, I can say to my antagonist. I totally threw air quotes around the words big, fat loser when describing the pastor. That clears me, man. I'm clean. While they're not biblical, air quotes seem to sanctify insults and debatable theology, like baptismal water sanctifies a baby's forehead. But I understood Jim's point. While I'm quite sure religious people in places like Chicago and Detroit don't kneel southward when they say prayers to Jesus, I have met a good number of vacationers who come to Nashville because this city is a big old John Deere buckle in the Bible Belt. Seriously, think about it, Matthew. Do you know of any other city in America better known for its fear of God? Jim wiped sweat off his brow. I don't think I do. I thought for a second. I don't know, I hear Colorado Springs is rather fearful. I'm sure that's true, he said, but I doubt it's Nashville. I've been told this city has more churches per capita than any other city in America. Jim nodded. Honest to God truth, Matthew, that's what I've been told by a number of people, and I can believe it. I believed it too. No doubt we have a lot of churches in this town. But since I've heard the same statistic used in reference to Dallas, Birmingham, and Orlando, I'm not sure it's scientific. But scientific matters don't hold much weight in Christian cultural claims, so it probably wouldn't count even if proven. Even if Nashville doesn't lead with the most churches, I've always said that one of this city's chief exports is Jesus. God's only Son gets shipped, bussed, couriered, radioed, televised, faxed, emailed, and if need be, dropped like a bomb from 20,000 feet in places all over the world because of what happens here in Nashville. In many ways, we are God's command center, His Pentagon, His newer Jerusalem. With a push of a button, we can have 1 million Bibles dropped in a remote location in China. With a phone call or two, we can get a person carrying some very good news to show up on your doorstep, like Publishers Clearinghouse. The only catch is, you have to die before you're able to afford that mansion you've always dreamed of. Jim and I walked out of the sauna to cool off. He sat on one of the benches, and I went over to the water fountain. So tell me why you thought moving to Nashville would make it easier to be a Christian, I asked. Jim laughed. Because Christians are everywhere here. I thought it would be amazing to be in a city where Jesus is as much a part of the culture as Dolly and Cracker Barrel. I laughed. Okay, I get that, I said. I've probably been there at some point in my life. Jim continued. I also thought it would make being a pastor a lot easier. I mean, back home I would never have had this kind of conversation with somebody at the gym. Here it happens every time I work out. It's almost annoying. Sometimes I feel like we're playing church. It's difficult to explain, really. But I understand what you're saying, I said. I'd been looking for a way to ask about the tattoo, but with no open window, I just blurted, Jim, you have to tell me the deal with that tattoo. You mean you don't like it? Jim laughed. Man, I was young when I got this. I guess it was my way of sharing the truth about Jesus without having to say anything.